Deuce Geralds is the must-land prospect in this class, and Ole Miss is really in the game.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast, bringing you the best coverage of the Rebels every single day. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today, we're breaking down Ole Miss's star-studded Junior Day, which could shape the future of the program. The headliner, Deuce Geralds, a dominant defensive talent who has shined at the Under Armour All-American game and took home the MVP honors at the Polynesian Bowl, both as a junior. Geralds is a perfect fit for the Jared Ivey role on the defensive line and could be a true difference maker at the next level. We're also keeping an eye on Reese Wise, he's a quarterback from Austin Westlake. He is a name to pay attention to, according to David Johnson. We'll introduce you to him as well. And plus, we break down Ole Miss's tough loss to the Auburn Tigers and what's next against Kentucky after their home loss against Arkansas. We're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. For a second listen, check out Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy for more SEC insights. You know, Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than the FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. So Ole Miss held their Junior Day on Saturday. That was the same day that Ole Miss took on Auburn. In fact, a lot of the players from Junior Day went over to that basketball game, which only could help because of how much of an exciting atmosphere it was at that basketball game. But there's kind of a star-studded list that was coming in. But the headliner, without a doubt, was Deuce Geralds. Deuce Geralds is a defensive lineman from Georgia. His father was Devin Geralds. He played center at Ole Miss. He was on the 2008, 2009 teams as well. And I think he was there, pretty sure he was a freshman or so whenever I was at Ole Miss, which makes me feel increasingly old that somebody's son that was on the team when I was there is going through. It just kind of happens, but that does kind of hurt the ego a little bit. I talked to Deuce Geralds at the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando. Really, really nice kid. He talked about what he was looking for at the next level. He was talking about playing time. He was talking about specifics that he wants to see from Ole Miss. He talked about over and over again. He wanted to see Ole Miss play high schoolers on the defensive line, which, you know, that's kind of weird because Xavier Harris is probably going to be the starter, who was a high school recruit. Santarin Perkins is going to play a ton. And then you have like Cam Franklin and William Eccles and guys that are going to get a lot of work out of that high school class. So that's only a positive, in my opinion, for Ole Miss when it comes to Deuce Geralds. You know, Deuce took off. He was at the Under Armour All-American game. I talked about that, but he also went to the Polynesian Bowl in Hawaii as a junior. He was a junior that played in both of those games. And in the Polynesian Bowl, he had a couple of sacks. And I think he took home the defensive MVP of that game. He is somebody that if he was 3 inches taller, he would have a scholarship offer from literally everybody and potentially be the number one player in the entire country. The only thing that is holding this player back is the analytics. It is just looking, the defensive line should be a certain height, a certain speed, and all of that. People ask, I talked to football scouts all during the Under Armour All-American game about Deuce Geralds and what they thought about him. And they wanted to see if he could set the edge and play a true defensive lineman. If he was a 3 technique, when he got sealed off on somebody running a power play or something, facing a pulling guard, would that guy wash out a 270-pound defensive lineman? Whenever you look at the stats that are listed of Deuce Geralds, they seem to every time be a little bit more than he looks. Now, a lot of that could be the fact that he just looks really good. He looks like he's 265 pounds out there, but you know he's not. He's built like a rock. But Deuce Geralds, if he can hold up against the run and be that dominant defensive lineman, Ole Miss could get a commitment potentially over the course of this year, and he would be a Aaron Donald type presence in the middle of that defense. That's the ceiling for him of what he can do. If he can play well against the run, he can be that dominant force that Ole Miss needs on the defensive line, that Ole Miss wants on the defensive line. And Ole Miss would be very good in a 5 technique, which would be a 3-4 defensive end. He would be very good in the 3 technique, in my opinion, which is a 4-3, not the nose guard, but the other interior defensive lineman. The point is, he looks like he's going to be a very versatile player wherever he goes. Now, everybody is recruiting this athlete. Everybody is. This is not a situation to where Ole Miss has an easy road ahead of themselves. He's already visited Ohio State. He's been out to USC. He has offers from literally every school not named Georgia. And if he was 3 inches taller, he'd have that offer as well. But like I said, if he was 3 inches taller, he'd be the top player in the country, bar none, for what he can do. Ole Miss simply must get this athlete. They must land this player, because the top player in Mississippi, arguably, is Tristan Keys. He was at the Under Armour All-American game in Orlando as well. But he's a wide receiver. Ole Miss has done wide receivers before. Defensive lineman and offensive lineman, that's the trench play that is the next step for this program, especially at the high school level. And Deuce Geralds would provide a lot of that, and the athleticism that he possesses just honestly second to none in this class. So we'll see if Ole Miss can land him and where he is planning on going at the next level. Ole Miss has a real shot. When I talked to him at the Under Armour All-American game, you could see it in his eyes. Ole Miss has a real shot at landing this player. And him showing up at the Ole Miss Junior Day, which is kind of the ceremonial kicking off point of the 2026 recruiting season, that kind of lets you know he is doing in actions what we all think he would do if he was interested in Ole Miss. He really is. Ole Miss is absolutely in this game. It is going to be a fight, and it's going to be up to Ole Miss and Randall Joyner and Lane Kiffin and Pete Golding to reel him in. I think they visited him 2 or 3 times already this year, and he's visited for Junior Day. So I think Ole Miss is in a very good spot for this player. Now, some other players from this Junior Day. You have Landon Duckworth. We put his highlights up last week. He was at Junior Day. Ole Miss made an impression on this athlete as well, and he is one of the star-studded quarterbacks that Ole Miss has taken a swing at in this class. That includes Ryder Lyons. I think there's an Oregon commit as well that they're trying to get. So they're going to try and take a swing. Keyshawn Henderson is on that list as well. But we're going to talk about somebody in the next segment that kind of raised the floor of this class, that for some reason they whiff on these large ranking quarterbacks. They got a pretty good one lined up that looks like he's ready to go as soon as that offer is committable. We'll talk about that in just a second. But Landon Duckworth, the quarterback out of Alabama, he is one of those elite quarterbacks. And he visited Ole Miss and thought a ton of that visit till he said, hey, Ole Miss is in this. Ole Miss is really in this. And part of that has to do with the offense that Ole Miss runs. He likes Lane Kiffin. He likes Charlie Weiss Jr. There's a whole lot of good PR that Ole Miss is getting as a players program at the moment. Now, the other name that we need to know about that people might not be talking about very much, and I saw this, I think, on 3, maybe it was Billy Embody. It was Bryson Cooley, who is an offensive tackle out of West Jones High School in Mississippi. The Mustangs, they used to be in my division. He's an offensive tackle. He's not rated very much. He's somebody that has a chance to really go up as the camp season starts, because about the middle of February, those camps are going to start and these ratings are going to change drastically. So you're going to see a bunch of guys that are low 3 stars that end up 4 and 5 stars by the end, and it starts with these camps. Bryson Cooley is one of those guys that can make a jump. 6'4", 6'5", 280 pounds. He has the body type that you're looking for of an offensive tackle. He visited for Junior Day as well, and Ole Miss has went down and seen him as well. So that's 3 names that you need to pay attention to. That is not all the names. That's not even the biggest names that were on campus, but we will talk about them over the next few days, depending on what goes on. But I really like Bryson Cooley. Landon Duckworth I really like as well. And, of course, Deuce Geralds is an absolute must-have for Ole Miss. We'll see exactly how that goes for the Rebels and how they are doing. So Ole Miss is swinging big for a 2026 quarterback, but they've already raised the floor of that position. What do we mean? We'll break down the impact of the Rebels' offer to Reese Wise coming up next. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, and endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make the play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, yeah, that's icing on the cake. So download the app or head to thefanduel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Bet with FanDuel. It's an official partner of Super Bowl 59. So one interesting thing happened over the course of this junior day, and this always happens in these junior days, is you find out about players that you didn't really know that much about. You learn about them a little bit, and we're going to introduce you to one of those players from the junior day this year, and his name is Reese Wise. He is a quarterback out of Austin Westlake. When you look at his rankings and all that, like I said, you're not going to have many rankings because they haven't had camps and all of that yet, but he does come from Austin Westlake High School. And Austin Westlake High School should be familiar to you because that is the high school of Drew Brees. That is the high school of Nick Foles. That is the high school of Cade Klubnik. And I think one other big-name quarterback went through there as well. This is a good quarterbacking high school, and all of the quarterbacks look roughly the same way. When you look at Cade Klubnik and Drew Brees, it even goes back 20, 30 years to where it feels like there's an assembly line of quarterbacks from Austin Westlake. He's a really good player. Now, let's look at the highlights real quick. It's somebody that when you look at what's going on with him, you can see the similarities between him and Jaxson Dart. You can see that Lane Kiffin with Jaxson Dart found a body type, a way the game is played, and a throwing accuracy version that fits what he wants. He is a typical Austin Westlake quarterback. He is somebody that you can count on in the pitch, and he can throw the football really well. Seriously. He also plays the game like a linebacker. You can see him playing that tough brand of running football from the quarterback position that you expect to see from a Jaxson Dart. When you look at Reese, when you look at him, you have a situation to where it's not really wondering why he is ranked as low as he is. Maybe it's an arm strength thing. Maybe it's an accuracy thing, but it's not really a body type thing. He's 6'2", 205, means he's probably going to end up 6'2", 6'3", 230, which is fine for playing quarterback at this level. He plays at an uber high level at Austin Westlake High School, which is one of the top classifications in the whole state of Texas. And when you look at their offense running, they're running very, very sophisticated stuff. They're running college level stuff at the high school level, and they're running it very well. They're very well coached. Whenever I was at rivals.com, way back when, a couple of moons ago, when I was there, I was sitting here talking about, listen, when you take a player out of Mississippi and Texas, the difference between the two is those Texas players are so much closer to their ceiling. They are close to what they're going to be as a finished product. So if he's a dominant player in high school, he's not going to necessarily make a jump at the college level. The player at Mississippi might be just scratching the surface, but once you polish that up and do what happens, you could have an actual diming. Look at Chris Jones for an example on that. But how that hurts running backs and wide receivers and offensive linemen being so close to a player's ceiling in Texas, it actually helps quarterbacks. I'm of the type person that you recruit your quarterbacks when you can from Texas or California, period, because of the coaching that they receive. You recruit your offensive linemen from Texas. You recruit your linebackers and skill positions from Florida. You recruit your defensive linemen out of Mississippi. If you do that, you're probably going to find a decent formula to make a pretty good, pretty talented team. This kid's obviously well coached. He can do absolutely everything. And he talked to David Johnson in an interview that referred to Ole Miss as his dream offer. And David Johnson actually used the statement that this kid, as soon as his offer is committable, he's committing. This is a big deal to him. This is a kid, by the way, you want to talk about kids today and the way this is all set up. Lane Kiffin is going into his, sixth year at Ole Miss, which means this high school player was in sixth grade when he got to Ole Miss. So all he knows about Ole Miss is Lane Kiffin and Matt Corral and Jaxson Dart. Those are the names that are synonymous for a quarterback with Ole Miss. You're at the point to where you can't even think back to Ole Miss being an afterthought in college football. It's helping Ole Miss in recruiting. It's helping Ole Miss with the ideology. Ole Miss has won 10 games in 3 out of the last 4 years. That's what these recruits know. And Ole Miss taking advantage of that and doing what they can is going to be very much an important thing. And this player, Reese Wise, is going to be very, very important for what Ole Miss is doing. Because, like I said, this raises the floor of this quarterback class. If Reese Wise is the guy you get and you end up with, you have a really good quarterback coming into your program. Shoot for the stars. If this is your floor, you're exactly where you want to be. Now, another thing that can happen with Reese Wise, and you look at his tweet where he announced that he earned his offer on Junior Day, it got retweeted by Lane Kiffin. That makes me know that we should probably keep an eye on this kid, because whenever Lane Kiffin does this, he probably has seen something in this kid, and I think he's about to take off in the rankings. So you might see a situation in these combines that are coming up to where he absolutely blows up and becomes a mid-level 4-star pretty quickly. That's something to absolutely pay attention to. Lane Kiffin just doesn't retweet every single offer, every one of these. He only does this for specific reasons, and I think Reese Wise could be a special type player for Ole Miss. Listen, the quarterback position for 2026 and beyond is fascinating. With the transfer portal and high school recruiting and all of that, Ole Miss is going all in on Ryder Owens and Keyshawn Henderson and Landon Duckworth for the upper shelf of the 2026 recruiting class. In the transfer portal, Auburn's a 7-5 this year from Deuce Knight potentially transferring out of Auburn. So that's an opportunity again. This player prevents a situation like this year to where Ole Miss didn't land on Deuce Knight, didn't land on anything, and you didn't really have a high school quarterback that you liked, that you were willing to dump a ton of money into. So you ended up getting a Pierce Clarkson and just like, hey, let's kick the can down the road and go to next year. In 2026, it's imperative that Ole Miss sign a high school quarterback, in my opinion. Whether it's one of those big upper crust quarterbacks or somebody that is an absolute stable player in Reese Wise. I like Reese Wise. And like I said, it's in the David Johnson article. He says that whenever the offer becomes committable, he's likely going to commit, which tells me this is the floor of this class and Ole Miss is going to shoot for the stars. It might be a situation where Ole Miss takes 2 quarterbacks and this guy ends up with a committable offer at Ole Miss. We'll see exactly how it goes for the Rebels, and it should be a lot of fun. So Ole Miss dropped a tough game to Auburn, but don't panic just yet, Rebel fans. I saw some key takeaways that could help the Rebels bounce back against Kentucky and beyond. Stick around for the breakdown. All right, so it's a big game in the Pavilion on Saturday against the Auburn Tigers. Auburn's really, really good. Doesn't matter how you think about them and what you feel about them. This is a really good basketball team that Auburn has. I think they have 13 or 14 quad one wins at the moment. They absolutely ran through the Maui Invitational. Their only loss was on the road at Duke. This basketball team is pretty special. And Ole Miss, they were so close in this game. You look at the score and the stat line of what was going on. Auburn ended up winning the game 92-82. Shot 48% for the game, which is impressive against the Ole Miss defense. Ole Miss shot 46.4%, and they actually just went to the glass over and over again and drove the lane. Me and Tim Thomas talked about that last week. Ole Miss didn't shoot particularly well from three-point range. They were only 6 of 19. Auburn was 14 of 28. When Auburn makes 14 three-point shots and shoots 50%, there's nobody in the country that could beat that basketball team. It just doesn't matter. Ole Miss kind of got washed away on the boards, 41 rebounds for Auburn, 30 rebounds for Ole Miss. Auburn had 24 fouls to 18 for Ole Miss. It's a situation to where if you just look at the score and what went on, you would be, okay, we need to get deflated and start to worry about Kentucky. But Ole Miss shot actually fairly well from two, which is new. They did a good job taking care of the basketball. Sean Padula ran the point at times very well and ended up with 29 points in the game. Ole Miss played pretty well, but the problem for Ole Miss in this game was they would fight all the way back to get the lead cut down to 2 or 1 point, and then Auburn would make a three and another three, and all of a sudden it's a 7-point game. I talked about last week that Auburn's one of those teams that you can play really well. Everything could be going great, and you could be at the under 8 timeout, down by 3 points, and by the under 4 timeout, you could be down by 12. Auburn is that type of ability, and the guards that they have, they're tremendous shooters. I thought they were the ones that won the game, not Janai Broome. Although Broome did some player of the year type things in this game, it was the guards that won this game for Auburn, and they're shooting from the outside. Like I said, there was a couple of big runs. Ole Miss got it down to 1 point in the first half. All of a sudden, Janai Broome hit 2 3-point shots. They went to halftime up 7 points. It was those shots that was able to keep away, because over the course of just the game, when they were just playing, it always felt like Ole Miss was chipping a lead. It always felt like that. Then Auburn would have those little bursts to get the lead out. I said it was similar to like at recess when somebody was just having their hand on the forehead of a child and they just couldn't reach the length to fight back. That's kind of what Auburn did in this game. So I'm not going to like say, oh, woe is me and all of that, looking at what could happen with the Ole Miss basketball season moving forward. Ole Miss is 5-4 in the conference. This is why that Texas win was so huge. It's why that Texas A&M win was so huge. But 5-4 with Kentucky coming into the Pavilion on Tuesday. Kentucky lost to Arkansas. Arkansas was unbelievably hot shooting. They won in front of 21,000 in a hotly contested game where Kentucky fans were all ready just to give Calipari the business. Arkansas went in there and won that game by double figures. You're going to get the best from a Kentucky team. And honestly, if you want to be real about it, a team's going to probably play fairly similar to what we saw against BYU. That's how it's going to look. And if Ole Miss can start quickly like they did against Auburn, drive the lane, have foul trouble, and have better three-point defense, because Kentucky shoots the three really well. If Ole Miss can defend the arc a whole lot better and run those off, you have a chance to really put this game away. I think Ole Miss defensively, their advantage that they have over Kentucky, I think Ole Miss can take advantage of that. And if Ole Miss does that, they can get the win, and all of a sudden you're 6-4, and you're honestly sitting about where you want it to be after 10 games with 8 left to go and only needing 2 wins in 8 games, 25% of them to be NCAA tournament eligible, with games at home against Mississippi State, playing South Carolina, who is winless in the SEC, even though the games have been tight. You know, there's wins on the schedule as it gets close. Now, you also play Tennessee. You also play Florida. You have a road game at Auburn. You have some difficult games. You have to win the games like against Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, pretty good at home too. But if you can win 2 of those games, you'll be in good shape if you win the Kentucky game on Tuesday. Really as simple as that. Avoid them shooting threes, shooting you out of the building like they did against Mississippi State and Starkville. If you can take away their 3-point shot, make them play a little 2-point basketball, turn this into a half-court game, you should be all right. We'll see exactly how it goes, but this is the first time that I can remember in a minute, honestly, that Kentucky is likely going to come into Oxford and Ole Miss probably should win the game. Kentucky's good. I'm not saying they're not good, but if Ole Miss plays well, Ole Miss is going to win this basketball game, and they're going to be 6-4, and let's see exactly how this season plays out. Now, if they play poorly, they allow Kentucky to make some 3-point shots, all of that. Ask Tennessee. Kentucky can win in your building. Doesn't matter how good you are. Kentucky's a talented team with some really good basketball players. But if Ole Miss does what you expect them to do, honestly plays the same game they did against Auburn, if they do that again, they should likely win this basketball game. And we'll see exactly how it goes for the Rebs. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On SEC podcast. Host Chris Gordy holds no punches, covering the best conference in all of college football. Find Locked On SEC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everyone. And remember, analytics is just the old English word meaning bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.